Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man must seek answers for his friend searching for love. So, do you believe in love at first sight? Because I fell in love with the strange woman in the window.
So she just sits there, I asked, and you're just staring at her like a creep?
No. It's not like that. It's like she wants you to look, grinned Reggie. She shows off her legs, her white little panties. She throws her red hair around.
That doesn't make you any less creepy.
She knows I'm there. Hell, last time she smiled at me.
She smiled at you, I scoffed. A human woman actually smiled at you. You, Reggie.
I get a hell of a lot more smiles than you,
He teased.
and I swear, she smiled at me. I'm telling you, I'm in love.
Tinder not working out for you? Super likes not getting you anywhere?
If I had to choose between a random woman smiling at me from a window once every 2 weeks, or getting a match that isn't a bot on the Tinder meat market, I'd choose Window Girl 10 times out of 10.
I'll drink to that. And so we did. 6 shots of tequila and a game of pool later. We said our goodbyes. Then he disappeared. One day, he was just gone. No messages, no logins, no goodbyes, no witnesses, no indication of him going anywhere. There were rumors of him being attacked. There'd been news of an up-and-coming masked gang harassing a neighboring town, but nothing was confirmed. The police did a decent job bringing in the usual suspects, but nothing came of it. They even had search parties looking around the old campgrounds. There was talk of having a diver check the lake, but I don't think they ever did. Of course, they were following all leads, but that one thing Reggie'd rambled about on that last night when I saw him. The pretty girl who'd smiled at him from a window. It was a struggle to find out anything about her. This is a big town. Reggie traveled pretty far from work to home. I must have traveled that same road 100 times, back and forth, looking for whatever window he could have seen her in. But he wasn't very specific. There were apartments, houses, rentals, motels, hundreds of windows all along the road. How would I know which one he'd been looking at? I started taking Reggie's road home every day just to see if I could see what he saw. It was a hassle, but it gave me a pretty good idea about where he'd look, what he'd do. It wasn't a long way out of my way, and I wasn't planning on doing it forever. So I told myself I had to at least try. 6 weeks after his disappearance, I was ready to give up. The police already had. The case had gone cold. There were no more leads to follow. One night, as I followed that same damn road, I stopped at a corner shop to get a Coke. Standing with a cold can in the evening breeze, a thought struck me. Maybe the woman wasn't just someone he happened to see randomly. Maybe it was someone he went out of his way to see. Someone slightly off his usual route. Like someone you might see when you step out to get a Coke. Right across the street from the corner store, just above a bookstore, was a small apartment and had this wide window alcove that overlooked the street. There was someone sitting in the window. She wasn't at all what Reggie had described. She wasn't flaunting her underwear or flipping her hair around. She was this 20-something young woman, cuddled up in the alcove, reading. She had these big, dorky glasses and long brown hair. Not red like Reggie had said. Striking green eyes, just like my first crush had, back in middle school. Still, I couldn't help but to stare. This had to be her. This was the woman Reggie had talked about, and I could see why he'd fallen in love. It was damn near impossible not to. I must have stood there for the better part of 5 minutes. I had every intention to check the address, see who lived there, and try to find out all I could about her. And yet all I did was stand there and gawk as she gently turned the pages. Then, as soon as her head moved in my direction, I looked away and hurried back to my car. It was embarrassing to say the least. I could still see her in the rearview mirror as I got back out on the road. I'd talk to her the next day. Or maybe the day after that, whenever I could work up the courage and maybe find out a bit more about her. I did find out a few things. That corner apartment wasn't a rental, so someone owned it. It hadn't been sold in the past 20 or so years, so whoever owned it had lived there for a while. It was one of the older houses in town, and there were pictures of it from all the way back in the 60s. Even the same bricks, only slightly paled by the sun. The following weekend, I went back during the day. This time, the window was empty. I took the time to just walk around and check the place out, see if I could get a name. I took the time to check out the bookstore under the apartment. It was this old, dusty place that I'd seen for years, but never actually bought anything from. It was run by these two older men, bickering about some nonsense in one of the back rooms. As soon as I entered and that bell rang, I saw their two heads peeking out. "Hey," I called out. You the owners?" They looked at each other, paused, and sighed in unison. One of them, the one without a lengthy beard, approached me.
You looking for something?
He asked, "It's about the apartment. I don't know if you..." They both rolled their eyes. The man in the back shook his head and went back to his computer.
Of course you are.
The beardless old man sighed.
I'm sorry. We can't help you.
"I'd appreciate whatever you know. You've never talked to her?"
I haven't even seen her, sorry. My partner told me he's seen her brother once.
I could hear a jubilant, "I have," from the back room. I got the feeling that they'd had this discussion a few times already.
I'm sorry, they keep to themselves. We don't want to bother them.
"Have they never been down here? Bought anything? I saw her reading."
Might have,
He nodded.
but I wouldn't know. I don't ask every customer where they live. Maybe we ought to start.
He gave me an apologetic shrug and returned to the counter. I thanked them, waved, and left. I asked around the neighborhood. Random people on the street, passers-by who seemed familiar with the area. At one point, I called out to a half-naked woman sunbathing in her yard. I talked to a dozen or so people. No one had anything clear to say about the woman who lived above the bookstore. Some claimed she lived alone, others said she lived with her brother. Some thought it was her father or her husband. But it was clear she wasn't living alone. One man claimed he'd seen an older woman walking around up there, so maybe it was a whole family. Then again, they didn't seem to have a car, and no one had seen them leave. I was getting a funny feeling about the girl living there. It wasn't a large apartment, so I couldn't imagine so many people living there. One or two, sure, but 3, 4? No way. I decided to take matters into my own hands. It took me a lot of stomping around to build up the courage, but I made my way up the stairs to the apartment door. The name on the door just said More. Strange family name. I stood outside her door for a solid minute before I knocked. Had I known she wasn't home, I wouldn't have bothered. I knocked 2 more times, but there was no one to answer. Instead, I just stood there like an idiot. If I'd had any paper, I'd left a note. I did take a mental note of the other 2 apartments on the same floor being empty, though. Strange. I started going by that street regularly, once a day, waiting for her to show up in the window again. Every day, sometimes more than once, I passed that street. I was starting to wonder if I was still doing this to find out what happened to Reggie, or if I was genuinely interested in that woman I'd seen in the window. Maybe it wasn't even the same person. After all, she looked nothing like the woman Reggie had described. It took me 2 weeks of diligent watching to finally see her again. When I did, I nearly got in an accident. I slammed on my brakes, shocking the driver behind me. I parked outside the corner store, and I just stood in the middle of the dark street, gawking at her. It was the same woman, same brown hair, another book it looked like, and she'd cuddled up with a blanket. There was a cup of something warm next to her, fogging up the inside of the window. I could see those emerald eyes all the way down the street. She was magnificent. In a moment of onset stupidity, I waved at her. I couldn't help myself. To my surprise, she turned to me. She put down her book, tilted her head, and met my gaze. She looked bored, frustrated even. There I was, some random man on the street, waving at a young woman in the privacy of her home. I was being an idiot. Then she smiled at me, and I fell in love. This warm, genuine emotion. She was so happy to see me. She was eager to meet me, I could tell. I had to go see her. I ran across the parking lot, crossed the street, and went around the back of the building. But as I put my hand on the door to the apartment complex, I felt a tiny drop of water on the back of my hand. For a moment, it made me stop, just long enough to think. As one drop turned into 100, I snapped out of it. This was too strange. I'm not a bad-looking man, but finding myself running across the street to knock on a stranger's door, that ain't me. I wasn't being myself. Maybe the same thing had happened to Reggie. I wiped the rain from my face and went inside. I hadn't even noticed the strange blue mesh bags used for garbage piled in a corner of the hallway. This time, I felt a bit more observant, but I still walked up those stairs, and I still knocked on that door. Not just to see a pretty face, but to ask questions. This time, she was home. I knocked 3 times, firmly.
Come in.
A soft voice spoke. I just want to ask a few questions, I said, about a friend of mine.
Come in.
The voice repeated. I took a deep breath and felt the handle. It was open. This wasn't right. A lone woman letting a strange man into her apartment at this hour? Sure, this wasn't a big town, but this was just odd. Shouldn't she at least meet me at the door? I could see a shine from the peephole. She was nowhere near the door. She wasn't even looking out. Do you mind coming out for a sec? I asked. It won't take long.
Come in.
I'm sorry to bother you. It's just...
Come in.
My stomach slowly turned as a chill crept up my spine. I let go of the handle and backed away. I'm sorry. Can you hear me all right? I think the door...
Come in.
Oh, she heard me. No way she didn't. Was she mocking me? I need to talk to you. I'm not coming in. No response. A shadow suddenly blocked the light from the peephole. Someone was looking out at me, and I hadn't even heard her move. I took a step back, leaning against the wall across from the door. I should leave, I said. I'm not...
Come in.
This time the voice was harsher, insistent. It wasn't an invitation anymore, it was a request. I felt my heart skip a beat, and I just kept backing further and further away from the door. As I reached the stairs, I heard a mechanical sound. A click. A lock. I peeked down the stairs. I could see someone by the exit, a shadow locking the door from the outside. Reggie? I didn't get time to think as I heard a creaking noise. The front door was opening. She was coming out, and whoever had been downstairs disappeared into the night.
Come in.
This time the voice was dark, bubbling, like someone speaking underwater. All I got was a short glimpse. Her gorgeous brown hair, hiding a strange face. Scaly skin that changed tint as I looked at it. Too many eyes. Some blue, some brown, some striking green. The components of the beautiful woman I'd seen, scattered about something wrong. I would have stared at her forever, had I not been instinctively backing away. I lost all balance as I reached the edge of the stairs, and I tumbled backwards. It felt like an instant, like no time passed at all. I was suddenly on the ground floor looking up the stairs. I was bruised, my leg twisted. Behind me, I could feel the front door locked.
Come in.
I heard from the top of the stairs.
Come in. Come in.
A face peeked around the corner. It was rearranging, making itself pretty, discarding old teeth to regrow new ones. Little white molars danced their way down the stairs, only to turn to dust. She was changing hair color to black, and her skin to a Mediterranean tan. She was starting to resemble my first girlfriend. I closed my eyes and turned to the front door. I heard clumsy footsteps slowly make their way down the stairs behind me as I pounded on the door. I screamed for help, forcing myself to my feet. Another footstep.
Come in.
I kept screaming for help, pounding on the thick glass.
Come in.
There was a sudden heat near me, someone warm and inviting, the smell of exotic fruit shampoo, something resembling a hand reaching out to me, brushing against my jacket. Then someone stepped out. One of the old men from the bookstore, the beardless one. Instantly, I heard the footsteps behind me hurry, back up the stairs. The old man unlocked the door as I scrambled out of the complex. My twisted leg couldn't support me, so I fell flat onto the pavement, crawling backwards. Away from the thing I'd seen and smelled, the old man looked confused. Call the police, I stammered. Call them, dude. Oh my God. The old man brought out his phone and dialed the emergency number. He kneeled down next to me, putting his hand on my shoulder.
Are you okay?
He asked.
Did that man do something to you?
What?
The man. That young man by the stairs. Did he hurt you?
I just sat there on the pavement. I barely even moved until the police came. I told them I'd been attacked. I told them there was something wrong with the one living in the Morey apartment. I told them about Reggie, about the girl in the window. I must have just kept babbling on and on and on as they took me back to their squad car. The owner of the bookstore just looked at me apologetically and waved goodbye, giving a short statement to one of the officers. I don't think they did a damn thing to whoever or whatever lives in that apartment. I think they did nothing, found nothing, and just chalked it up to me being hysterical. I'm getting mixed messages depending on the officer I ask about it. One says, no one lives there. Another says, they're out of town. One claimed it was some sort of storage. No one is giving me a straight answer. I think Reggie is still out there. I think something was done to him, but I don't know what. I think he lost himself to whatever lives in that apartment. And sometimes, to this day, I stop by that corner store to see if there's someone in that window. And sometimes, there is.
Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories, straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a celebration turns into a nightmare when things become all too real. So on the night of this full moon, prepare for your doom, because something went wrong with our escape room.
We wanted to do something special for Lindsay's birthday. She'd turned 30 just as the COVID lockdown came into effect, so we missed a big one. So when the stars finally aligned and our calendars synced up, we decided we were going to get her something special. A girls' night out for the first time in years. Lindsay always had a bit of a dark streak. Her birthday is just 1 week before Halloween, so by then everything is pumpkin-flavored and covered in plastic spider webs. Spooky things were just part of her aesthetic, and even as a mother of two, we'd still see her sporting a skull necklace or pentagram earrings every now and then. But we were running out of time. We couldn't decide what to do. Some of us could set aside the whole weekend, others had to work or be home by midnight. It was getting difficult to settle on a single thing that would fit everyone. That is, until Aggie found something that was just perfect. An escape room. We all met up on a Saturday. It was me, Dawn, Aggie, and Lindsay. After a fancy dinner and a long walk, we arrived at the Apostle Collective building. They'd opened about a year ago, and they'd been booked solid all spring long. That we managed to book a room this close to Halloween was nothing short of a miracle. Some of you have probably heard about them. They're sort of a chain. They got like 5 locations, most of them in Minnesota. The place was spot on. It didn't just have the classic Halloween stuff, but smoke machines, hidden speakers, projectors, the whole kit. The staff were dressed up in prosthetics, looking like old-time zombie carnival workers. We stepped in. They checked our booking and gave us a little box of free popcorn. Lindsay was ecstatic. We'd told the staff it was all for her birthday, so they paid a little extra attention to her. She deserved it. As we stepped up to the door, they gave us an introduction.
You're stepping into the box of the godless grinning witch,
We were told.
This is our longest, scariest room yet. Pretty much brand new apart from playtesters. You were lucky to get a booking. The other group canceled last minute. Either way, all you need to solve it can be found in there. Just try not to break any furniture or move something that's been bolted down. None of the clues will require a lot of force, so you wouldn't have to break anything or exert yourself.
Are there actors?
Dawn asked.
You can tell us, right?
I can, but I won't. But whatever happens, you won't be harmed. Something might reach for you, chase you, touch you, but no harm. So please try to keep that in mind.
Are you leaving the door open?
Aggie asked.
Can we leave at any time?
Just knock or send us a text. The door locks automatically, but we can open it remotely with the click of a button. Just knock.
So what's the story? What's our deal?
Interrupted Lindsay.
Ghouls? Ghosts? Vampires?
I was so happy to see Lindsay like that. She could barely stand still. The box of the godless grinning witch is about a cruel witch who have trapped 4 souls in a little box. As they scramble to get out, they start realizing they're not alone. The souls have to find a way out while avoiding the monstrous beings trapped in there with them. There were no more hints, and part of the experience was going into it knowing just 2 things. We had been captured, and we weren't alone. Aggie kept her phone so she could text for hints and reach the staff if necessary. The rest of us put ours away. This was going to be an intense game, with a solve time average of about 4 hours. That said, we were allowed to stay until midnight. And if we solved it without a hint, we got a very special prize. We could also send them a text to pause the game for a bathroom break. We put away our coats, Dawn did a little stretch, and Lindsay was visibly shaking with excitement. This was going to be good. I was the last one to step inside. Just as the door closed behind us, I noticed the staff members suddenly look off to the side. Their brow furrowed as they stepped back. In the blink of an eye, they were gone. Then the door slammed shut. There was something off, but I didn't want to alarm anyone. They were so excited, and the game was just getting started. It was a black, windowless room. Lindsay was being chatty, but Dawn and Aggie were kind of wondering what the hell they'd agreed to. After a few seconds, there was this chilling laugh, followed by a light. They'd installed a video projector in the ceiling. The entire room lit up as we looked up to see a video of an impossibly large woman looking down on us, like we were the size of a Rubik's Cube in her hand. She had these sunken, joyless eyes and a wide grin that stretched ear to ear. Clearly CGI. Far above her, we could see the full moon. As an effect, it was pretty impressive.
I think she's based on a local legend,
Said Aggie.
some kind of pilgrim myth. I've heard about this.
As the grinning witch put her hand over us, the room went dark once again, and electric torches flared up along the walls. The game was on. There were all kinds of items all around. Paintings, carpets, chests, tables with strange runes. Classic escape room stuff. We all split up and started looking through whatever we could first get our hands on. Aggie found some sort of pamphlet and started calling out names. Dawn found a set of numbers under a chair. Lindsay was just soaking up the atmosphere, trying to find clues in the paintings. About 30 minutes in, there was this awful sound. A rattling page, followed by snapping metal. There was a loud moan and approaching footsteps. There were a few spots in the room that were obvious hiding places, so we hurried inside. Lindsay couldn't stop giggling, and even I felt my pulse racing a bit. But nothing happened. The pre-recorded noises came and went. There was this disconnect, like a pair of real footsteps were supposed to sort of take over the sound, but nothing happened. We just hid for a couple of minutes, then stepped out.
Did we miss something?
Dawn asked. There was a pregnant pause as we looked around the room. Nothing. Strange. We made decent progress. We found a set of keys that opened a chest, which revealed a black light disguised as a candle. Using it, we found a set of codes to decipher using a set of runes. We found out there was a touchpad behind a painting, which we could use to write a code. That in turn opened a small side room full of clues. So, yeah, decent progress. Then again, we heard strange noises, rattling chains, loud moans, and thundering footsteps. We figured this was it, that the previous one had just been a warning. So again, we rushed to our hiding spaces. And again, nothing happened. This time, something was clearly broken. There was a recorded voice coming from the ceiling.
I think he likes you.
It whispered.
Like hell he does.
Aggie frowned.
He's not coming out.
Relatable.
Grinned Dawn.
I'm using the bathroom. Text him.
Aggie texted the staff as Dawn pulled on the door. It was still locked.
Wait,
Aggie said.
they haven't responded yet?
Dawn knocked on the door. There was no response. No sound.
Still nothing.
Added Aggie.
No one.
Something turned in my stomach. That sudden pinch of worry that something had gone terribly wrong. As Dawn kept pulling on the door, Lindsay stopped smiling. The pep in her step faded.
Is this part of it?
Lindsay asked.
Is it a meta thing? Are you in on it?
No, I protested. It's just one of those auto-locking doors and they forgot to set it open. Right? It's probably nothing, right?
No response.
Sighed Aggie, holding her phone up.
I'm calling Hank.
As the others gathered around Aggie, I stepped away for a second. Aggie's husband, Hank, wasn't picking up. I put my ear up against the walls and listened, figuring I might be able to hear the staff chit-chatting in the next room over. There were supposed to be actors here, or staff just outside. Something about this wasn't adding up. As I leaned against the wall listening, I heard footsteps again. But this time, they didn't sound pre-recorded. I hurried to the others, holding a finger up to my lips. Listen, I mouthed. There was a slit in the wall where a door could open from the other side. Someone was coming this way.
Is that them?
Dawn asked.
Is that?
Those were big steps. Really big, heavy steps. Without knowing who was coming, we all just silently agreed that this whole thing felt completely off. No one knew what to do.
Hide!
Dawn hissed. There were plenty of things to hide behind, but the room was small. They'd find us in no time. Despite that, Lindsay and I hid in the small side room. We shut the door, held our breaths, and waited. Dawn was small enough to fit in a chest, while Aggie hid behind a curtain in the back of the room. In the low light, it might just work. As the door slid open, I could hear heavy breathing, big, dragging feet, and a weird, wet, snorting noise. A clear scratching sound as something sharp was pulled across the floor.
Please pick the small one first, Byron.
A hoarse voice wheezed.
Go on, pick it.
A pig-like screech echoed through the room in response. This wasn't a recording. This was coming from whoever was in the room. There really was something there. Something big. I heard the sudden sound of tearing fabric and a scream. This awful, drawn-out death scream. A shrieking, pleading terror as someone was physically dragged out of the room. I'd never heard anything like it, and it was impossible to tell who it was. Then, with a thud, it all went silent. The door was closed. Lindsay and I peeked out. The curtain that Aggie had hid behind had been torn down. She was gone. There was blood. We found Dawn curled up in a chest, shivering. She couldn't make eye contact. When we tried to snap her out of it, she just screamed and clawed at us. Her eyes were wild, and she was barely breathing.
Did you see anything?
Lindsay whispered.
Wait, what? What was it?
Dawn just shook her head. I could see there was a crack in the wooden chest. She might have been able to see something. We just weren't getting through to her.
I'm not waiting for that to come back.
Lindsay said.
Help me get the lights.
What? I shivered. The lights. It can't find us in the dark. We went torch by torch and shut it all down. The room went completely dark, and we gathered by Dawn's hiding spot. We crouched next to her, trying to calm down.
It's part of it, right?
Whispered Dawn.
Is Aggie in on it? Are you just fucking with me?
No, something's wrong. I whispered back. I'm sorry, Dawn. There's...
Bullshit.
Wheezed Lindsay.
This is fucking bullshit, and I'm not... Who's got the phone?
We all went quiet. Aggie was the one with the phone.
There has to be fucking... something,
said Lindsay.
Feel around.
For what? I wheezed. Where? I don't know. How the fuck should I know? Just try. Do something. I stepped up to the door. Still locked and no one outside. I started feeling around, only to find 2 cables. They might just be a light or something, but there was another possibility. Look, maybe the door is locked until we text them or time is up. What if the door unlocks? Like, what if it unlocks when we solve it?
It won't work,
sighed Lindsay.
There are some things in here that require a staff member to manually click something open with a button. Some clues just won't work without it. But I don't think there's anyone out there anymore.
What about fire escapes? You can't just lock people in a room? I could hear Lindsay sink down to the floor.
This is a mistake.
she cried.
All of it.
The side door slammed open again. Big, heaving footsteps came in. Even in the complete dark, we could tell there was someone huge in here with us. Someone who smelled like dirt. Again, something sharp scraped across the floor.
Byron, get another one.
A voice laughed.
Whichever you like.
I just pushed myself up against the wall and turned my head on the side. I tried making myself as flat as possible. I knew Lindsay was doing the same. Dawn, on the other hand, was panicking.
No!
She coughed. No! A loud, pig-like snort. The scraping thing was lifted off the ground. I heard 2 feet firmly planting in the ground as something heavy was lifted, and Dawn fell to the ground with a thud. She tried to talk, but she'd had all wind knocked out of her. Instead, she just tried to get away. I heard a loud exhale, the kind of sound where someone gets something heavy dropped on them. And in the seconds that followed, I heard this large being, Byron, violently drag Dawn out of the room. To the untrained ear, her scream was almost the same as Aggie's. As the door slammed shut again, I could hear Lindsay sobbing just a few feet away. I couldn't move. My body was stopping me from comforting her, and I'd been so tense my neck was stiff from pushing my face against the wall. For what felt like hours, we just waited. It was probably just minutes. Finally, Lindsay got up. She fumbled her way over to one of the tables, flipped it on its side, and broke a leg off. Then she did it again and handed the second leg to me.
Don't just let them, you know?
She said.
Okay?
Yeah. I nodded. Yeah. No, I won't. I started to hyperventilate as my fingers wrapped around the slippery wood. There was no way I could use this. My hands were so sweaty the thing was falling out of my grip. I couldn't fight. Not with that. Not against whatever was taking us out one by one.
Maybe barricade the door?
She said.
Yeah, let's...
Wait! It was a good idea, but it was too dark. That, and I could hear the footsteps coming again. Faster this time. Determined. The thing entered on its own. No guiding voice. Lindsay and I held hands and pushed ourselves up against the wall. I couldn't hear it dragging anything this time, but I could hear lips smacking, followed by these high-pitched micro-grunts. Whatever it was loud, and it was munching on something. It wandered around for a while, feeling around the table, the chest, and even the little side room. After a few minutes, it seemed satisfied not to have found us and headed back to the door. Just as it was about to exit, we hit the 90-minute mark. The game, partly automated, was still running. The projector came on again, displaying this large woman in the ceiling. The entire room was lit up. It immediately saw us. The thing was easily 6'8". It was dressed in this sort of torn varsity jacket with filthy, mud-covered jeans. There were long strands of black fur poking out of every cut and tear in its clothes, making it look like a badly stuffed scarecrow. It wasn't fully human. His head looked like a boar. It looked right at us, its snout twitching with excitement. He had these small, dark eyes. I'll never forget how, when it looked at me, they lit up with nothing but joy. No matter the species, you can just tell. It was looking forward to this. There was no fear, no malice, just unbridled, violent joy. Like a kid tearing into a happy meal. Meeting my eyes, the thing just screamed like a wounded pig and charged. I stepped on my own feet and stumbled backwards. Hadn't it been for Lindsay still holding my hand, I would have gone down like a sack of flour. Instead, I barely stayed on my feet as we rushed to the other side of the room.
Still down there, playthings.
The recording in the ceiling spoke.
Will you not give up?
As the video played above us, the light in the room shifted. Whenever she was more in frame, the light grew more distant. When she moved back, the full moon came into view.
He'll get you, playthings.
The narration continued.
It is so futile.
There was blood on his jacket. Fresh blood. As the video finished, we'd ran a full lap of the room. We were back at the door, and this time he was charging straight ahead. At the last second, Lindsay let go of my hand and we fell to the side. The boar man ran straight into the door. It seemed to upset him as he focused all his rage on it. Pounding, tearing, biting. All the while roaring like a wounded animal. His joy was gone. This was frustration. Hunger. It didn't take him long to break the door open, and as light flooded in, he turned to look down the hall. The brightness from the street outside seemed to scare him as he took off out the back. Lindsay and I stayed on the floor a couple of seconds, just to ensure ourselves that the thing was gone. We eventually crawled out the door, ready to run. There were bloodied handprints on the walls, something resembling a fingernail, blood spatter on the ceiling. We ignored it all, got up and went straight for the exit. Come on, come on, come on. I'd sprained my ankle and Lindsay was bleeding from her hand. We were about 40 feet from the door when we heard that voice again. The voice that had guided the boar man. Neither of us turned to see him. We just had to keep going.
Tell them.
He screamed.
Tell them there will be no carnival games in the name of her ladyship. Tell them to fear. Tell them all. Tell them to fear the grinning witch.
He laughed so hard he couldn't breathe. Lindsay pulled me along when all I wanted was to collapse and cry. We burst through the doors and into the night. And far behind us, the laughter faded. Putting it all in writing feels a bit weird. Like I'm telling someone else's story. But Lindsay is as real as the last time I met her. And I don't think we'll ever overcome the trauma. I still feel myself stopping at random times, listening for footsteps. Lindsay has developed a sort of claustrophobia. No more locked doors. Ever. The police chalked it all up as an armed robbery. The security cameras picked up 4 intruders getting in through the back door. 3 hooded figures and a large masked man in a varsity jacket. The case was handed off to a special unit and promptly dropped. We didn't get any updates after that. It wasn't filed as a kidnapping, or murder, or similar. All they could prove was the break-in. But as far as what happened to Dawn, Aggie, and the staff members, no one knows. There was no car speeding off into the night. There were no witnesses. They seemingly vanished into thin air. It is true that the Grinning Witch was a bit of a local legend. A witch that collected cursed animals and people and put them all in a box. The escape room barely had anything to do with it, though. It was just loosely based on that idea. But somehow that was enough to draw out some kind of hate sect. But I'll never forget the man with the boar head. No matter how I think about it, no matter how I try to wrap my head around it, I can't stop thinking about him. That was no man in a mask. That snout was wet, and those teeth were real. Nut jobs are everywhere, but that thing? No, it couldn't be. It literally couldn't be. I don't think this will ever be resolved. Why would it be? Things like this don't just happen. They don't. But this time they did.
Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man must seek answers from the most unlikely of sources. So, tuck yourself in or grab a coat for your stroll and stay far away from the wheelbarrow cult.
My mother left us when I was 6 years old. She'd been having an affair with a coworker and it turned into a relationship. My dad got full custody of it, and this huge part of our lives just disappeared seemingly overnight. A year later, my mother had moved to Sarasota and was about to have her second kid, what would be my half-brother Charles. My father never really recovered. He tried to get back out there, but some levels of trust just can't be regained. Still, time passes. 2 halves of a family repaired themselves. And even though my relationship with my mother never quite recovered, we kept in touch. A periphery touch, but still, if something were to happen, I got to hear about it. And then there was Charles, my half-brother. I didn't know him. Everything about his very existence had always been painted in sort of a black cloud. I hated him, not for who he was, but for what he was. an expression of the most turbulent time in my youth. I hated him. I couldn't help it, and I knew nothing of him, but I hated him nonetheless. I didn't pay much attention to Charles and his antics. He was just this person somewhere off in the distance, living his own life. I saw the occasional high school photo, or him recommending something off his Spotify playlist. He was just some guy. I wasn't there to celebrate any of the big birthdays, and he didn't celebrate any of mine. Charles turned 21 in 2017. I saw some pictures of a big party, and there was an open-ended invitation for anyone to come join. I'm sure I'd have been allowed to if I wanted. But that was never really on the agenda. It wasn't even discussed. I had my own life at that point, and patching that bridge seemed useless. Like trying to fix something that you worked your whole life to get around. What's the point in fixing a bridge when you're an Olympic swimmer? Something like that. There were things happening behind the scenes that I didn't know of until much later. For example, Charles had been having anxiety issues since middle school. He was riddled with phobias and panic attacks. He'd been having trouble keeping up in school, and most of his friends were, at best, superficial. The kind of people who turn their back on you when the going gets tough. I had no idea about any of that, but I was about to get a lot more involved in his life than I'd ever asked for. It was late July in 2018. I was coming home from a long shift and had stopped to get some groceries when my phone went off. I loaded in the last paper bag, gave my girlfriend an apologetic look, and took the call. It was my mother. I hadn't spoken directly to her for decades.
Hey, Blue Jay.
She sighed
I'm sorry it's been so long.
My first reaction was anger. How dare she call me that still? It turned my stomach sour, like I'd swallowed something smoldering. I managed to keep things polite, biting my lip. Everything all right? She had to be calling for a reason. She wanted something. She'd never talk to me without a reason.
It's about your brother,
she said.
I don't know what to do.
I don't have a brother.
But you do.
She sighed.
You do, and I think he needs you.
She explained the situation as best she could. As a way to deal with his issues, Charles had been seeking advice and guidance from people outside of his usual social circles. Harmless stuff at first. Spiritual guides and faith healers. He'd studied Buddhism and Hinduism to broaden his horizons. And he'd been trying everything from yoga to revival gatherings. But lately, things had taken a turn.
It's just been one thing after another.
My mom explained.
And now it's just, he's gone all quiet.
Isn't that a good thing?
Charles tells me everything.
She sighed.
This isn't like him. I can't get a hold of him.
So, just call the police.
He's an adult now.
There was a short break. She composed herself, clearly upset. My callous tone wasn't helping.
I think he's with some bad people.
She reached out to me, figuring I'd be someone far enough in the periphery to go under the radar. Someone they wouldn't question too much. Everyone else in Charles's life seemed to be blacklisted and turned away at the door, but perhaps an unknown half-brother might slip by. That's what she argued anyway.
I know I can't ask you to help,
she said,
but I think it could do us some good, all of us. Family is important to you, huh?
Again, silence. I just shook my head. I'd opened the car door and sat down. My girlfriend could tell I was upset and was leaning over to hug me. I hadn't even noticed how hard I was digging my fingers into the dashboard until I saw them turning pale.
You don't have to believe me,
Mom said.
But it really is.
And with that, I hung up. I argued with myself back and forth for days. Charles had never done anything to hurt me, but I couldn't help but to hate him. But it was difficult to say whether that hate was more important than that sinking feeling I had in my stomach. Even then, even at my lowest, angriest point, I couldn't bring myself to want to hurt my mother. I couldn't. So I decided to help, all other things be damned. At the very least, I could show her I'd turned into a good man, all without her help. I texted her to get me all the info she could, and I booked a flight over the following week. I made my way to Florida. I'd been getting tons of emails with all kinds of images, descriptions, and video, but I hadn't taken the time to sit down and review it all. I had a rough idea. According to my mom, it had started with a nightmare. She told me that Charles kept having nightmares about a boy in blue. He'd call her late at night, rambling about it in a half-woken stupor. These nightmares would control his life, and he would try to find subtle ways of dealing with it. To an outsider, it just seemed like much of his other anxieties, a fixed idea that he couldn't rid himself of. There were pictures of his apartment. He'd remove the curtains from the windows to make sure the boy in blue could spot him if need be. Later, he would just opt to sleep out in the open. Something about the clear blue sky being a relaxing factor, and there were other little things. He started to wear more formal shirts. He cut his hair. He started growing strange flowers in his front yard. And then, radio silence. Gone. First thing I did was to check his apartment. Just like my mom had said, there were no curtains. I could see straight in, and it was easy to tell it hadn't been used for quite some time. I got the impression that something had happened there. It was just too barren. A 20-something-year-old with an interest in religion and philosophy and not a single piece of memorabilia. No books, nothing. The place was a ghost town. Hell, at least the sunflowers he'd planted were doing well. Not a fan of the blue color, though. Those things didn't look natural. The final straw was seeing the pile of mail by the front door. It was substantial. We were talking a couple of months at least. Reminders on reminders. Then there was the core of the issue, the group he'd been involved in. The Church of the 12th Sky Assembly. They had a bit of a social media presence, but they didn't have much to say. They seemed like your average run-of-the-mill group, with smiling young people offering companionship and understanding in their outreach material. It was so general that I felt like I'd seen it before. I had a bit of luck, though. Turns out, they had a community event going on later that day. I figured it was a good way to get my foot in the door. Probably wasn't the best idea to just go knocking on their compound. From what I could find, they had a place out by Lake Parish, but it seemed to be a members-only kind of deal. Not much said about it on their socials. So I drove out to Bradenton Beach, hoping to spot these nut jobs in action. Turns out it wasn't as difficult as I'd imagined. They'd made themselves a bit of a stand down by the beach where they were handing out flyers. Looking at it from a distance, you might mistake it for an energy drink program. About a dozen beach-fit young people eagerly engaging in conversation. It seemed so disingenuous. Still, I gave it a shot. I put my sandals on and took a casual stroll, pretending to be passing by. It didn't take long for a young man and woman to come up to me, their smiles as white as the flyers they were handing out. "Excuse me," they smiled.
Having a nice day?
"Can't complain," I smiled right back. "You folks out here selling something?"
Nah,
They chuckled.
just sharing the good vibes.
And with that, I had a pamphlet in my hand. I stuck around to talk to them for a bit. As a whole, the organization didn't look that strange. But once you started singling out individual pieces, you could see some inconsistencies. For example, their logo. For a church called the 12th Sky Assembly, one might imagine clouds or a cross. But no, their logo was a wheelbarrow, one of those old-timey wooden ones. I counted the pegs on the wheel, but it just added up to 7. It wasn't even numerically consistent. Then there were the members themselves. I got the impression that this wasn't an actual passion of theirs. They seemed disconnected, and their lines seemed practiced. Like they weren't really members of the church, but just paid to be there. The way they talked, when they didn't think anyone was listening, sort of confirmed this. This was all an act. But for what? "Are you the folks out by up by Lake Parish?" I asked. I think I've seen that logo before.
That's just administrative. We're in 7 different cities across the state, so it takes a whole lot of effort from a whole lot of people to keep things running.
They immediately got defensive. I tried to shift away from the compound, instead talking about meetings and other members, but they'd already soured. It wasn't until one of the folks in the background approached that I felt like I was getting somewhere. He was a man in his early 50s, with short blonde hair and a sizable gut. Large black glasses, a white shirt, and a blue tie. He patted the others on the shoulder and smiled at me.
"You consider yourself a man of many questions, friend?"
He asked. I suppose I am. Not a lot of places to ask them nowadays.
Well, I hope you find what you're looking for.
And with that, he turned his back on me. I must have said something to spook them. I had no choice but to go all in. "The boy in blue," I said. It was the first thing that came to mind. It had been the central theme in Charles's issues. It had to mean something. The man turned around, adjusted his glasses, and squinted at me.
The boy in blue, huh?
"Yeah," I nodded. "It's been keeping me up at night."
I can imagine.
He put his hand on my shoulder and took a deep breath. Finally, his eyes met mine. This time, his smile was genuine.
Perhaps we got a few things to talk about after all.
I spent the better part of the day talking to that man. His name was Isaiah, and he was one of the aspiring members of the church. He'd been with them for a couple of months and was still getting his bearings. Still, what I'd said resonated with me. The boy in blue was a common theme among the church's inner circle. They said it was a prophetic vision, a guideline for things to come. Later in the afternoon, as we were calling it a day, Isaiah and I circled back to the tent they'd set up down at the beach. I almost stumbled over one of the wheelbarrows they had there, and I couldn't help but to ask about it.
It's an unusual symbol, I'll freely admit to that.
Isaiah chuckled.
But it's about picking yourself up, about extending yourself beyond your usual capabilities.
That's a lot to ask from a wheelbarrow.
We don't ask anything from the wheelbarrow.
He smiled.
It's about you. You're the one who has to pick it up. But it's there when you need it.
Having a foot in the door, I settled into a temporary routine. I called my girlfriend every night, keeping her updated on what was going on. I sent a text to my mom every now and then too, but I couldn't bring myself to talk to her. I would spend my afternoon messaging Isaiah and trying to keep a low profile, waiting for an invitation to something further. If I could just get a chance to meet the other members, there'd be a chance of me meeting up with Charles. And maybe I wouldn't be able to get him out of there, but at least I could make sure he was okay. I met Isaiah a couple of times over the following week, once for lunch and another time at a separate event. I was invited to help and I accepted. I mostly printed pamphlets and helped setting up their tent. The pamphlet wasn't that interesting. The logo, an address for an office downtown, and an inspirational quote about reaching for the sky. Not much more than that. I got the impression that handing them out was mostly a way to get an excuse to talk to people, rather than to share a message. Almost as if it was expected for them to do this. The more I spent time with Isaiah, I got the impression that this wasn't just a church. There were no priests or preachers, and there were no spectacular meetings. If anything, they were just going through the motions. Everything pointed to the compound by Lake Parish. There had to be something there, and Isaiah was my way in. I had to try something big. The third time I met him, I hadn't showered for 3 days. I pretended to have slept in my car, and I made up a lie about going through a rough breakup. Isaiah was a bit surprised, but bounced back as the gears in the back of his mind clicked into place.
Sorry to hear that,
He said.
You made a beautiful couple.
It was an innocent enough sentiment, but there was an uncomfortable reveal hidden in it. He knew what my girlfriend looked like. I'd never shown him a picture. Had they been looking me up?
I guess that's why you're out here, huh? Starting over.
I'm just in a bad place, I said. I barely get enough sleep as is.
No, I hear you.
He nodded.
I've been there, but it's like sometimes the cure is worse than the disease, you know?
Him saying that stood out to me. This wasn't a man trying to trick me into a cult. This was a man trying to keep me out. It was a warning, not an invitation. Anything is better than this, I sighed. Isaiah looked me in the eye, clearly concerned. He tapped a nearby wheelbarrow.
All right then.
We drove out to Lake Parish later that day. It was a silent trip with Isaiah behind the wheel. No radio, no small talk. If anything, he seemed apologetic. He didn't want me to do this. Following a side road, we passed a sign that reminded us that we were entering private property. Not long after, we reached a chain-linked fence. Isaiah had a key for the padlock. The compound was not what I expected. A trio of one-story buildings out in a field, covered from end to end by the fences and trees. The knee-length grass that covered the area made the place look abandoned. A handful of people in white shirts moved between the buildings, pointing at one another and having lively discussions. So what can I expect? Do all people here have the same problem?
Yeah,
Isaiah nodded.
but not all are willing to deal with it.
He looked up at me, but not in the eye. He wasn't sure about this.
Talk to Miss Miller,
He continued.
and go from there.
I got some time to just walk around the compound, looking for Charles. There was a central area between the 3 buildings that looked like a sort of gathering spot. The ground was flattened and the grass cut, with 6 wheelbarrows off to the side. I don't know why, but I felt this unease looking at them. They all had these dark splotches at the end. There were probably about a dozen people there at the time. Isaiah took the car and left, leaving me to speak with this Miller woman on my own. She had an office on the west end of the front building, almost like a reception. I couldn't get over how sparsely decorated the place was. A logo every now and then, the occasional wheelbarrow, and that was it. The place was pretty much sterile. It even smelled like a hospital. Miss Miller was an older woman with short gray hair and thick glasses. She asked me to come in and sit down across from her and fill out a form. I was asked to surrender my phone, keys, and wallet. The form asked for all kinds of personal info, including password and username for various social media accounts. But what surprised me the most was the second page, which was all about my proposed anxiety issues. There were 3 spaces for paragraphs where I was supposed to describe my meetings with the boy in blue. I just made something up, trying to keep the small talk up. Miller didn't have much to say. She assured me that there was help to get, but that they needed complete honesty from me. I tried to ask her a bit about the other members, which she called patients, and how they were dealing with it, to which she had this to say.
What you're experiencing is no fault of your own.
She said.
It is not by the will of a god, or Satan, or anything in between. It is beyond our measure, and so, the steps to stop it may seem drastic.
I had to go through a quick physical checkup. I had to fill out a health form, and they tested my blood. There was a surprising amount of people on hand who seemed to have a medical background. Some seemed to have a corporate background. I noticed a lot of boxes with a particular pharmaceutical company. It looked like a sort of axe or hatchet. When all things looked to be in order, I was guided to a personal room at the far end of the compound. A long corridor with locked doors, from which I could hear groaning and crying. A nurse rushed past me with an armful of bloody linens. Miss Miller showed me to a private room. Not much to it, a bathroom, a bed, an end table, no windows, and the door locked from outside. The latter I didn't notice until the door clicked close. I probably spent the better part of a day locked in that room. I could hear people in the other rooms. Most of them weren't saying anything coherent. Some were crying, others just screamed. Someone tried to keep their composure and politely asked for help, all coming from muffled voices from behind locked doors. Now, I don't have a way to check, but I think it took about 12 hours or so in total. I'd arrived early in the morning. By the time the door opened, it was getting dark outside. My first thought was to get the hell out of there, but I was in too deep. I'd invested too much, and I just had to finish it. If Charles was stuck in this place, it was time to get him out. When one of the nurses let me out, I was handed a wicker basket with various hygiene articles and some fresh clothes. Washed and cleaned, I was put in a line with other people. Some who looked worse for wear, others who didn't seem to know what was going on. There was this one woman who could barely stand up and had to lean on one of the nurse attendants. Looking at them, it was easy to forget that this was supposed to be a religious organization. It looked more like a hospital. We were taken out into the middle of the compound. There were about a dozen attendants and 9 other people like me who'd been taken out there. They turned on a series of floodlights, bathing the yard pale white. That's when I saw Charles. He must have lost at least 30 pounds. The guy was skin and bones. His hair had fallen out and he had this patchy, unshaved mess on his face. He looked completely out of it. I couldn't imagine him recognizing me even in a healthy state. But now that I'd seen him, I was glad I was there. I was going to help him one way or another. I just had to get through whatever this was supposed to be. We all lined up in a circle, each with a wheelbarrow in front of us. Everyone else lifted them up by the handles, and one by one, they were administered a pill. People just took them, no questions asked. I could hear a single protest, someone not being sure. They were simply asked if they wanted help or not. They did, and down the pill went. When it was my turn, I just shook my head. No, thank you.
Then we're gonna have to ask you to leave,
said the nurse. I looked around the circle. I was holding up the line. There was no ifs, ands, or buts here. If you wanted their help, you took the pill. So I did. It was a sort of muscle relaxant. It wasn't a powerful hallucinogen or anything like that. Just something that made my shoulders slump and my speech slur. But looking around the circle, it seemed to have a massive effect on the others. The nurses went patient by patient and recorded what they were saying, making notes on a spreadsheet when there was something of particular interest. Most folks were just rambling incoherently, but a few of them were strangely lucid. Some were naming places or things, vague descriptions of events unfolding. A few of the nurses were asking targeted questions, or even making demands.
Ask him to show you the Portuguese election.
One nurse said.
Are you getting anything?
I was asked to share my experiences too. I just copied a bit from what I heard others say. I could tell they weren't entirely convinced. They went out of their way to get a light to shine in my face, but before they got a chance to, one of the guys next to me started freaking out. He was in his early 40s. Didn't look all that peculiar. Pretty fit, somewhat shorter than usual, balding. Reading glasses with a crooked frame. His knuckles had gone white, and he started shaking his wheelbarrow. His eyes rolled back in his skull.
A fire!
He screamed at me.
I see a fire!
The nurses flocked to him.
He's showing me a fire. Screams. A highway cut off it by fallen trees. Late autumn. November? Crackling bark. Turning black.
Look for a license plate.
One of the nurses said.
Can you see a license plate?
Oh, Ontario?
One of them ran off, speaking loudly into a phone. Others stepped back. They all looked at the man with anticipation.
He releases me,
the man said.
I'm released.
And with that, there was a sudden quiet. The nurses looked away as if bracing themselves. I didn't look away, but I wish I had. His voice became more distant as his jaw extended. His tongue was swelling. So was his abdomen. Seconds later, there was a loud pop. Blood and viscera exploded out of his stomach, filling the wheelbarrow. Then, another pop, as his tongue did the same. Then, he just stood there, bleeding out, frozen, holding that wheelbarrow. A tool to keep him from staining the ground. No one reacted. No one recoiled or ran or screamed. It was just this eerie quiet. I could feel panic boiling in my chest, but I tried not to stick out. There was no telling what they'd do if they thought I was faking it. About half a minute later, it happened to another one. The nurses called out to one another, confirming what they had heard. Fire, Ontario, late November. They were cross-examining information and details given by these people. Every bone in my body was telling me to run, to just beeline to Charles, get him and head for the exit. But looking at the dead man to my left, still standing, holding his wheelbarrow, there was a primal part of me that refused to move. I felt like an antelope watching a lion pass me by. A twitch of the leg might set it off. I had to wait. They were poking and prodding at the others, asking them questions. 4 people in total seemed to have something to share. And the same 4 people popped like overly ripe berries. Their faces had this look of relief on them. Like this was a kind of reward. This was what they aspired to get. The thought struck me that perhaps this was what awaited Charles as well. I looked at him as his head started to swivel back and forth. His eyes were rolling back. I couldn't wait. I took my first steps towards him. No one noticed at first, but as I gained speed, others called out. They asked me to stop, to wait, to listen. But as I saw Charles's hands tighten around the grip of the wheelbarrow and his voice rising in cadence, I didn't consider the consequences. I had to try something. Anything. So I tackled him. And the moment I put my hands on him, something inside me broke. I looked into his face as the world shifted. I was standing on a highway among dozens of broken down cars, burning trees falling all around us to the screams of hundreds. Charles was there. We were running in the wrong direction, watching people choke to death inside their cars. Others just walked into the woods, falling over from asphyxiation. Further down the road, a child, a boy, no older than 7 or 8, dressed in blue. That's who we were heading for. Charles looked back at me.
He's showing us,
He said.
We have to keep.
I grabbed him. I slammed him to the ground. I could feel the texture of the asphalt on my hands. I could taste the burning oak trees. But it wasn't real, and it couldn't be. In the blink of an eye, we were on a plane, falling through the sky. Oxygen masks long since deployed. People screaming as alarms blared. Again, just down the aisle, a little boy in blue, waiting for us to come closer, wanting to show us more.
He's trying to save us.
Charles cried.
He needs me to...
No! Another blink of the eye. Standing on a beach, watching a cruise ship slowly capsize, I forced myself to look away, to not see the name of it. I grabbed Charles by the face, forcing his eyes to lock onto mine. Blink after blink after blink. Earthquakes, shootings, fires, lightning strikes, hurricanes, floods, bursting dams, falling bridges, knives and guns, hangings to cheering crowds. Death. 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 Then, for a brief moment, grass. Back in that field, in that compound. People were coming for us. Charles was next to me, clutching his stomach. I leaned over, grabbed him under the arms, and lifted him to his feet. If I was going to have to drag him out, I would. Blink. A congregation standing in a massive cathedral with the ceiling music. Idols and Latin hymns crumbling, dark shades in the distance growing closer, then back again, screaming all around me. Another patient has burst on the other side of the field, filling another wheelbarrow. Blink, blink, blink. Soon, the screaming was getting harder to tell apart. Some of it coming from the nurses, others coming from the patients, others still coming from God knows where. It was all getting mixed up. Still, I carried Charles step by step out towards the front fences, trying my best not to have him look at anything for too long. His stomach was moving, literally, physically moving. His eyes were rolling back and forth. His tongue swelled to the point where words turned to noises. I had to get him away from this, to distract him. Something. I closed my eyes, a wave of hot air stinking of sulfur. An endless highway. Waves of red sand blasting us from all sides, blistering our skin. Rattling bones litter the side of the road, bearing witness to countless people who've fallen. Off in the distance, a boy in blue, urging me to look closer, to get sucked in, just like the rest of them. I cover my eyes, as well as Charles.
You need to know.
A voice whispers right next to my ear.
You need to see.
Something is pressed into my hand. I protest, I scream. I feel the sand burrowing into my skin. Suddenly, I am sitting down. A soft wind, the click of a seatbelt, then sudden acceleration. I thought it another vision, but it lasted too long.
Hold on.
A gate crashing open. I was in the backseat of a car with Charles next to me. He was doubled over in front of the stereo. In the front seat was Isaiah, stepping on the gas.
I'm sorry.
He gasped as he turned the car around, heading for the highway.
This is the only way to stop it. It's the only way it ends.
And with that, we sped into the night. By morning, Charles was getting better. His stomach wasn't moving anymore, and his tongue wasn't swelling. His eyes were red, but he could focus again. He was barely speaking, but visibly conscious. He responded to questions, albeit non-verbally. Isaiah confided in me that he'd been plagued by the same visions as Charles for some time, but couldn't bring himself to go all the way. He'd seen the end goal, how the nurses poked and prodded for people to extend themselves.
That's not the way I want to go.
He sighed.
No matter what, that's not it.
He shared a cigarette with me. I hadn't smoked since high school.
I saw what you were trying to do,
he admitted.
You were making the same choice that I'd had. Except you were showing it, you know? You were doing something. I've just been coasting along.
Isaiah told me all he knew. That the church was sponsored by some kind of pharmaceutical company. That their religious front was basically a way to identify legitimate targets and bring them in. To turn them into this sort of commodity. A wheelbarrow man. Someone who could share something about things to come. For a company to exploit.
They're not telling you the whole story.
Isaiah continued.
They don't tell you that it passes, that it comes and goes in waves, leaping from one person to another, and that if you just refuse to listen hard enough, it will leave you alone.
So they offer a fast and easy way at the cost of your life.
Yeah.
Isaiah nodded.
Story as old as time.
He looked down at his cigarette with a sigh, flicking it away. Charles was slowly recovering. He could barely speak, and we had to help him in and out of the car, but he made it back home. I thought I'd be angry seeing my mom again, but there was no way to get angry at a smile that honest. Her sense of relief was infectious, and that time when she hugged me and called me her blue jay, I couldn't help but to feel like she meant it. That one time, at the very least. And that was that. I've kept in touch with them over the years. Charles was in and out of therapy, slowly recovering from his painful visions. He got back on his feet about the time when the COVID pandemic hit. Isaiah got completely out of the Church of the 12th Sky Assembly, instead getting involved in local politics in his home state of Indiana. I think he works some kind of local campaign there. I'd like to say I've grown closer with my mother's side of the family, but that's not really how the world works. This was an anomaly in many senses of the word. I'm sure they are thankful, but apart from the occasional greeting or birthday card, things are as they always have been. So in a way, things are as they always have been. And in another very real sense, nothing is. See, something was pressed into my hand that night. I haven't told anyone about it, and I probably never will. A note with names, dates, and events. I don't want to think about it too much, or I might fall victim to the same thing that Charles did. Even talking about it now brings this sinking feeling into the pit of my stomach. Still, I can't deny that I can recognize some of these names in the news, and it's making my nervous. But it raises an important question. Would the knowledge we could gain from this be worth a life? Could it save others? Is it even real? The fire reference that night never happened, as far as I know. But if they hadn't spoken about it, could it have happened? I think the only way to get a clear answer is to look a bit closer and put it all on the line.